right. Hey, everyone. So, next panel is about NFTs and gaming. That's a very serious one. Very serious topic in the NFT space. Just so I know, any gamers in the room? Yeah, a few. Okay, all right. Traditional gaming, right? Any NFT gaming gamers in the room? Like Axie, some other projects we have on stage? Yeah, right. And how many of you own NFT assets? Do you have any like NFT gaming assets?
How many hold Dogami NFT assets?
Yeah. All right, so we have a crowd who knows what we're going to talk about. That's great. So yeah, really briefly, I think what can be good is for you to introduce your projects, what you're working on, and then from here we can go and dig a little bit more in the topic. So feel free.
Yep. So yeah, hello everyone. My name is Hoon Kim. I am the CTO of Astar Network, which is a layer 1 smart contract platform and also a parachain of Polkadot. And we have a pretty big and growing NFT ecosystem going on in our network. And also we have a lot of metaverse projects that we are working with as well. So yeah, happy to be here. Thank you.
Hi everyone. So I'm Bryce. I'm working on a project called Luchadores. It's essentially an on-chain auto battler on both the Ethereum network and Polygon. So the assets live on the Ethereum blockchain and the gaming logic is on the Polygon network.
Hey everyone, thanks for the invite. I'm Bilal Alamy. I'm the co-founder and CTO of Dogami, and I'm also an active entrepreneur in Web3 in Paris, where I co-founded EquiSafe, but also Pirates Lab, which is a newly founded startup studio dedicated to Web3 projects.
All right, thank you. And for me, so I'm moderating, as you can guess, and I'm the founder of Metahood. We do a marketplace for metaverse assets and real estate. So one topic I would like to start with is something that a lot of people are talking about in gaming in general. It's the general idea that NFTs and games cannot work together. That when you start to bring financialization into gaming, it doesn't work because people are not playing anymore. People are sort of working or at least doing something to earn money, and it breaks the spirit of the game. Do you agree with this?
I can start. So I know gamers are angry. I think the main thing is they don't like the price of graphic cards raising so much. That would be one. But also the main one is when they think about NFT, they think of their own experience as a gamer, about all those transactions that you do and those games that you need to pay $10K to have access to all the content. Those are like traditional Web 2 game, I want to say, not Web 3. But they project that onto what an NFT game could look like. The reality is, if you go back at the origin story of Ethereum, why Vitalik built it, he references World of Warcraft, actually. Because he mentioned that he was playing his Demolitionist, and then one day he wakes up and they nerfed a skill that he really loved, and his whole build was built around that skill. I can't remember which one it was. And so from one day to the next, his whole pleasure of playing World of Warcraft was gone because of an arbitrary decision made by the team of centralized developers somewhere, and he had no way of doing anything about it. So I would rather reframe it, in terms of even the governance of the game, for instance. A true Web3 decentralized game, gamers should have a governance power over those decisions. And so if there is a balancing change that is made, they should have a way to petition, to mobilize, to express that they would want to have it some other way.
Yeah, for me, regarding the public perception of does NFT and game mingle well together, I'd say now, in terms of how it's marketed and who are the actual audience and how's the community going, the community, NFT community, gaming community does not mix well. But I wouldn't say NFT as a technology does not mix well, because people mix the difference between NFT as an ecosystem or a community versus NFT as a technology that could be used for something, right? And that's I guess for me, it's kind of reminds me, the word remind is a little bit weird because I'm not that old, but during the early Atari years, when the whole marketing was like 64-bit graphics, that's a technology, but they're using that as a marketing term. And now people don't like their game because, well, the game kind of sucks. Yeah, sure, they had great technology, but so from that lesson, are we gonna say like 64-bit graphic does not work for gaming? No, like we use that. Like, we're going like so many bits now, we don't even count that anymore. But we don't care about that because it's not about the technology. It's not about like the new buzzword like 3D or ray tracing or machine learning. It's about the game. What's the end value that this project provides, and is it only possible because of this technology? And I think that's where we're kind of struggling right now. Hence why there's animosity towards one community from another, and why it doesn't really mix well at this current stage.
Yeah, I kind of disagree with the statement for two main reasons. The first one is that I think it's very hypocrite to say that. I mean, the world is financialized and whatever. So, and I think there is a lot of missing knowledge about proper value proposition, like Brice was saying. Yeah, obviously nobody's going to complain if you're able to not lose the thing that you worked hard for it. Nobody will complain when you stop playing a game to resell your assets because you're not playing with them anymore. So it's very hypocrite to say that NFT in gaming is just abuse. In every new market there are abuse, but the value proposition are very concrete. And now it's in the hand of the project to become more serious, to deliver a better product. To engage and have more fun stuff to do.
Yeah, super valid points. But right now, when you look at numbers, right, we are not at the stage at the volume of console games or PC games or in terms of users, daily active users, and so what's missing? Like, how can we make Web3 games and NFT games get as big and as mainstream as traditional games? Is it a matter of time? Is it a matter of
more games? We need more games to have more diversity, to fit with everyone's interests and gameplay. I think that's the first thing. More diversity. It comes only with time.
I absolutely agree. I would say if we have a fun game that does not advertise itself as using a blockchain, and the user doesn't have to understand what a wallet is, and they can still play it and feel the value that blockchain can offer, which is provable ownership, but also interoperability between different clients. I think that's when we can start to see people who wants to explore deeper in the space and definitely be more on par with the traditional gaming that we know.
Yeah, I agree. I think we need simply not just more game, but more quality games. Actual fun games. You remember when we played game to have fun? Like, if you look at the big success of the NFT gaming, the Axie Infinity and things like that, try to play those games. Like, it's not fun. It's like another interface for Farmville, essentially. Like, this is not what I want when I play a game. When I play a game, I play Civilization 5, and I want to have a 10-hour, insane game that will have like actual things happening and things at stake where I'm involved, and there's strategy and so on. And I think this is really what's missing at this point. Is some games, they get the financial side right, at least for a moment, but we still have to see a game that is as a game with a financial layer, essentially. But yeah, give it a couple more years and they should come. I think we have quite a few big teams that are working on this. So yeah.
Yeah, more AA games. Yeah, that's interesting. But can it work with projects that have raised money from NFTs, where you have a community that's saying, like, asking when Moon every day, and that's complaining about the floor prices? And how can it work with communities involved in the during the development of the game, for the team to take the time to build the game? If you look at AAA games, it takes years for them to build these experiences, and often like huge teams and huge resources. So is there a way to is it coming from, do you have to educate your community as a game developer, NFT game developer?
So there are two things that are very interesting in what you say. The first is that instead of going straight for a AAA game, since we have those NFT that we can use in different clients that we were saying, we can build the first version of a game, improve it, and have those quests that are more and more open to get the community engaged continuously. But it's very, very hard, for sure. The second thing is that there is a whole strategy, and if I take the example of what we did at Dogami, everything we did the central question we were asking ourselves is how to make sure among the customer that we acquires that they are dog lover. How to limit the option of being crypto mercenary, like we say. And for example, we were only allowed to buy one NFT in the second drop. So it's harder to speculate with just one NFT. And we've done a lot of quests that are related to dog universe to make sure that the people who access the whitelist, they know about dogs, they have dogs. So it's also the way of how you implement your acquisition to try to have a sane community. And again, it's easy to say, but it's really, really hard to do.
And actually, I want to sort of circle back into how my thoughts on like AAA game studios using NFTs for their project. I mean, we've seen that happen or try to happen a couple of times, right? With Ubisoft, their project which had negative publicity. I believe Square Enix, using their Final Fantasy series, is also trying to attempt incorporating NFTs to their games. One of our parachain good friend, Affinity, they had a deal. They have a deal with Square Enix, and I hope it goes well. But to me, if I feel like AAA studios adopting NFT should not be the start of mass adoption, but it should be the proof that it has been massively adopted. Because in game industry, I think there's three major stakeholders. One is the business stakeholder, the business side, the profitability side. Another one is the developer side. So developer as in creator, so people who design the game, people who actually use this technology for something to make something fun, and the player side. And those three stakeholders should play nicely. But in an NFT game, at least with what we have right now, based on my observations, every project that tries to incorporate NFT or any sort of blockchain technology and advertise that fails to make these three satisfy these three stakeholders. They only satisfy two at most. It should not be a trilemma. It should be a framework, right? And I think that's why it's kind of struggling right now. Everyone's saying like AAA games, investors are gonna pump so many money in there. Just put the word NFT in there somewhere, and then we got mass adoption there. That's great. I think that's a dangerous thought. I would actually go to the other way around, saying that if indie games, small game projects, wants to use this technology because they're more open to experimental stuff and just focus on what this technology can actually bring with their creative vision, I think that would be a great start. Then that would slowly get adopted as more players play. I'll add another point, like in Astar network, we have this feature called dApp staking, where any users can stake their token on a smart contract. And then that token or that contract developer will receive rewards as if you would receive staking rewards. And the motivation behind this is that you don't have to think too much about the token sales or the appreciation of your assets. Just focus on something that's innovative. Let the community decide if you are worthy of receiving rewards. And I think, well, for us, that's what we want to achieve as well. Indie game projects using dApp staking as sort of their funding mechanism, just focus on making something fun. Users, they don't pay, they stake.
Yeah, I'd agree in the sense that, if you look at regular video games, it's like the indie games push the boundaries, and then you have an AA game that comes after that and bring the whole masses on that new concept that this indie game pioneered. So it's probably the same flow we're going to see. But here, again, we have another layer, which is this financial layer. And I think this is where there is not much innovation yet. There are ways to do it. So you could picture a game, for instance, where you don't have to buy any NFT initially. Like the player can just start and play the game. And the developing team is just essentially getting some money when items from the game are resold on secondary market. So just living off creator fees of the NFTs that are used in that game. So now you have a system where you have no upfront cost for the player. When he plays, he creates value. And if the game is actually played and adopted and has a lot of users, and it will also translate into a decent revenue stream for the game developer. So that's one way you could go around it. And so far, I don't know any game that actually implements it at a decent scale, let's say. So yeah, it's all about like thinking about how you finance yourself, and the space is so fluid that I think it really makes a difference. So for instance, for us at Luchadores, we decided that we're not raising any money at the mint. That happened a year ago. It was just at the essentially the cost of the NFT, because it's a bit of a has more guarantees than usual NFT, so you had to pay tooling to mint it, but that's about it. And we really try to have this vision of, you're not just sending money to the developer, but you are actually getting something that has an actual worth, and then its value accrues as the ecosystem around it grows and the users make something out of it.
All right. Anything to add?
Nothing to add.
Okay, now I'd like to dig a little bit more on the technical aspects of NFTs in gaming. So one big buzzword everybody is talking about is interoperability, right? You're supposed to, if you own your asset as NFTs, you should be able to use them across different games, right? That's the main idea. But today, when you look at the whole blockchain NFT space, it's pretty fragmented, right? You have different chains, games built on different chains, and even in between games, you have very different games. Like, for example, you cannot necessarily use your shotgun from Call of Duty in My Little Pony game. It's kind of hard in terms of game mechanics to make it all work. So, do you believe it will be easy to get interoperability, both on a technical standpoint in between these different chains and on a game mechanic aspect?
I guess I could start. So, for me, I think that's more like how in terms of like interoperability between different chains and maximizing their value for your game. I think Polkadot is sort of the perfect ecosystem, in my opinion, for this. Of course, Cosmos is also really great with their IBC. But in Polkadot, we have this thing called XCMP, which is short for cross-chain or cross-consensus message passing. They change that name. They change the C like every time I say. But yeah, this is it's a message. It's an instruction. It's a message, generic message for interchain or interconsensus communication, meaning that you can send pretty much any instructions that other chain can interpret, which also means that you can transfer not only assets but also NFTs between different chains. You can also remote transfer an asset that's stored in a different blockchain from your blockchain. And why this, I think it's quite interesting, is because Polkadot, the ethos behind the Polkadot ecosystem is heterogeneous, specialized, application-specific blockchains, which will be a parachain, and they can interoperate with each other. So we have a lot of NFT-focused parachains in our ecosystem with their own special utility, and they can be a component of one component of a bigger game. Each parachains, each blockchain could be a component of a game, and you can still interoperate with other blockchains through this mechanism. I think that's one interesting outlook that I have.
Yeah, to go more on the actual game interoperability. So you have a bit of it already. If you think of like those Second Life type of game, like World Wide Web or other like metaverse, essentially, where you can come and any of your NFTs, at least those that are supported, but the support is quite large, can be used as your in-game character. So you can go into that World Wide Web and play your luchador in there. It has nothing to do with your game, but you do see your luchador, and you might even have a walking animation eventually. So you have this kind of like interoperability that's already doable, but it kind of shows you what's missing is the standard, essentially. So in that case, there is an implicit standard, I want to say, which is just you want a character that can walk around in a game. Okay, that's simple enough for many NFT to be suited. But your example with the gun into a pony game, yeah, that's another deal, where you cannot make everything interoperable. And then the deep interoperability where they have access to, so other NFTs have access to your actual core game mechanics, I think they would be more curated and community-based. So for instance, for us at Luchadores, we're thinking of, because we really like the gotchis, Avi gotchis, and we have like a good relationship with the French community. So we're thinking of a way of how can we bring the gotchis into the Luchadores game, so that if a gotchi wants to go in the ring and fight a luchador, he might be able to. But then it's a matter of balance, because you cannot also give this outsider NFT, I want to say, privileged status in your own game. It's you have to find clear ways to allow them to take part into the game, but then bring them at the same or a lower status than the original NFT of the game.
I really believe in interoperability, and I even think that it's the biggest value proposition of NFTs. But a bit of context first. What does it mean to be interoperability? For me, there's three things. The first thing is obviously the blockchain. If a game is on a blockchain and the other game on another blockchain, there is this first limitation. Then associated kind of the blockchain, you have the smart contract standard that is shared among all the wallets, ERC 721 for Ethereum, and FA 1.2, for example, for Tezos, which we use on Dogami. And then you have a third thing, which is the rendering of the assets. Because the NFT is two things. It's the visual asset that you can see, but also what you cannot see, the metadata and the attributes that constitute this NFT. And even though classical bridge between blockchain can solve the blockchain and the smart contract standard, because basically you're on a blockchain, you lock your token on a bridge on one side and they are issued on the other side, respecting the same metadata and pulling the same file and putting it on the other blockchain. But the problem is that for this file, depending on the games, you have different rendering engines. The most known are Unity and Unreal, but for example, for Sandbox, you have the voxel that is used. And so even though you're able to bridge the blockchain and the standard, it's going to be very hard to bridge kind of the rendering of the file. So if both games would use Unity, obviously the bridge would be enough. And interoperability would work almost seamlessly. When the rendering engine is not the same, it's a little bit trickier, but I'll give you an example with Dogami. How we handled that is that we created digital twins that are voxelized, and they are locked on the bridge. And when you try to go from one chain to the other, it actually locks the NFT on Tezos, and instead of reissuing one, he unlocks the digital twin. And so using like those types of methods, we can implement almost seamless interoperability, even though it's not the most straightforward method, but it still works. So I think it's going to be very important for the continuous gameplay of the players to create more cross-marketing with the different projects and to just, open the limits of exploration, of exploration of those metaverse. So yeah, interoperability is critical, and there are many ways to do it. And I think, as much as possible, we should try to implement it by design, or at least have the connectic for the different games to interact.
Actually, based on that topic, I was actually, it inspired me to ask a question. Do you think metaverse interoperability is the same as game interoperability? Because I think metaverse for me is more of a platform and a alternative browser to the internet. It's a content
Good point.
platform. Yeah, but video games have a clear start, a clear winning condition, and a clear creative mind behind it. And I'm not saying like games shouldn't be interoperable with each other in terms of their assets, but if that interoperability is what limits your creativity, then I feel like it should be the creator's freedom to discard that completely, just accept what is possible, and only just as long as you're able to communicate what's interoperable with your game and what you already have. I don't see that as a huge problem, and I don't feel like that should be a blocker for Web3 adoption into video games. But what's your thought on that?
Yeah, taking a step back on this, just to think of how it unfolded in decentralized finance interoperability, at the end of the day, because it's a bit of the same question. And I think in DeFi, essentially what's expected is you have an ERC20 token, a standard Ethereum token, all right? Well, then by just the fact of having that, you can already have so many potential use cases. So you can create a liquidity pool on Uniswap, and now people can buy and sell your token, and then maybe you can use it as collateral somewhere, so people can borrow an asset from it, and so on and so on. So you have all those tools that are immediately available as soon as you follow the ERC20 standard. And I think at the end of the day, for the gaming NFT, it's the same logic. So reaching a point where as soon as you have an ERC 721 or 1155, it comes with a set of different tools that are instantly available. It's already the case asset-wise. So you have an ERC 721, boom, you can sell it, buy it on OpenSwap, you can open a vault on NFTX to grow the liquidity and so on. You can do a lot of cool things. But where it's harder, it's at the level of the game, because it's not just an asset like a token, it's also an actual character or piece of equipment or land, whatever in the game. And this interoperability is so much harder to achieve.
Yeah. So I think we have we can touch one more topic, and then maybe we get time for a few questions if people have questions to ask. So another big debate in the NFT sphere is about what should be on-chain or what should not be on-chain. Like in gaming in general, your assets evolve, right? You level up as a character, or these kind of things happen. And should we do it off-chain and then have the metadata off-chain and the NFTs pointing to them, or should we build everything on-chain? Like, does it matter? Should we absolutely have everything on-chain?
It's a very good question, very technical question. Let's give a bit of context again. So what's on-chain? So on-chain is storing data on a database called the blockchain, where this data is basically unfalsifiable. Off-chain is using a classical database, where then so first it's centralized because it's not the blockchain. So when you're off-chain, you create centralization. So that's the first thing. Obviously, when you're on-chain, you have to spend crypto to store data on-chain. You have to pay gas fees. When you're off-chain, you don't have to do that. So it's cheaper to be off-chain. So negative point to be off-chain, it's centralized. Good point, it's cheaper. But then when you want, what you can store off-chain is only files. So so a file, it's, for example, the whole metadata of my whole collection. So when I want to update one NFT, I have to update the whole file. So that's a negative point for off-chain, whereas on-chain, you can target and update a specific NFT and pay just the gas fees for this specific NFT. So I gave you like three comparison points. What I think is that on-chain is still better. It gives more flexibility, and we're looking for flexibility. It's a little bit more costly, but in reality, it's not that expensive. You still have to pay classical database when you store your stuff. So yeah, I'm more of an on-chain guy.
Well, actually, I have quite a different argument. I mean, I definitely agree with what you said. Like, it's just like, I guess first, is it even possible to store everything on chain? Like, you can't. Up to a certain point, you have to download something from the internet. And you just have to run it on your local machine. And secondly, I feel like that's misusing blockchain. Yes, if you're creating like a simple card game or a Pokemon-like game, and those interactions are completely on-chain, it's technically possible, but why would you do that, right? What's the advantage of doing that versus keeping things off-chain and using on-chain data as read-only? And you would only add something or make a state transition to the blockchain when it is absolutely necessary. So keeping the chain clean, simple, and just maximize the game part, where the game relies on data that was stored in the blockchain. I think that's how I would see it in a more, I guess, I don't know what the current state of the blockchain technology.
Yeah, I mean, it's all. I think I agree with your perspective of like, what does it bring to bring that data on chain? And if you cannot answer reasonably to that question, then it's probably better off chain. But there are actually like good reasons you might want to bring that data on chain too. It all depends of like how you structure your game and the architecture of it. But yeah, using like cheap side chains like Polygon, you can already have quite a lot of data in there, and then it makes sense. So like to go back to the lucha, for instance, the goal is to eventually bring the whole fighting experience on chain and also use verifiable randomness for the randomness role. You might say, hey, it's overkill. Why do I need to have like provable randomness to know if I land a critical hit or if he dodges? But if you bring back the financial layer in the equation, then it's not overkill, because one day people might be fighting and there might be a big bet on a fight, or at the end of our first season, the winner is going to win an NFT that's worth several 5, 10 ETH whatsoever. We can't, we need to provide guarantees on such fight because they will have high stakes, and you have ways to do that using blockchains, Chainlink VRF, and a few other things nowadays. So if you can do it, why not? But then it's also, again, coming back to the question of the game infrastructure. We can do it for the Luchadores because it's an auto battler. It's essentially like not turn by turn, but let's say it like that so people understand. So we don't need to have real-time update of the status. It's not a fighting game or a shooter where I shoot someone, he dies instantly. There is no 3 seconds waiting for back and forth. So it really depends on the type of game. And then from here, you can decide on an infrastructure that matches what kind of guarantees you can provide to the users.
Interesting. All right, do we have any question from the audience? Yeah, you?
Thank you. What's your point of view on the NFT high speculation and massive adoption of games, when we see that some NFTs are needed to play but too expensive to buy for the common gamers if you are not too early on primary market and trying to buy it on secondary market?
Well, I would say if you're making a game that relies on someone to buy something that's really expensive just to play it, I don't think that's a good game.
I wouldn't be as harsh. You can have a distribution model where people minted the characters maybe 1 or 2 years before the game was even available. They believed in your project, and then the team shipped and whatsoever, and the NFT increased in price. It's not a problem by itself, because good projects that find themselves in the situation will usually mean they have figured the tokenomics, or at least part of it. So it means players who play the game actually earn money. And then if you have that, then it means you can also have a new player that doesn't own the NFT, but that will rent one from another player that has several. And usually it works in a type of contract, if you may, where it's a deal like, okay, you can have my Avigochi to play Avigochi on my behalf, and you will keep 80% of the rewards you're making in the game, but you send back 20% to me. And I say you and me, but it's all contract in force. It's not like you don't have the choice. You will send 20% of what you farm to me in a scenario like this. So as long as you have those tools that enable players to start playing the game without having to commit anything, I think it's all right.
Yeah, that's a good answer. And another one would be that you need to have not a discrete thing, but a continuous thing, meaning that maybe at T0 there are 10,000 NFTs, but probably the point of the game is to grow the user base. So those NFTs, you might breed them, you might merge them and create more NFTs. And so the price will tend to go lower at some point. And I think what's important is not the short-term volatility, because in everything there is a hype and the end of the hype. It's more of the long-term growth. Right now there are some Nintendo 64 that are sold at Christie's. So it's long-term growth. It means that Nintendo 64 was a thing for many, many years. So let's see if those games will be a thing for many, many years, and then they will deserve their price. But before that, it's hard to really judge.
Okay, unfortunately, we're running out of time, so it will have been the only question. Is there any one-sentence closing thoughts you would like to share with the audience? Anything you would like to talk about regarding your project or the industry?
Or maybe just not even an advice, but I don't know how to frame it. But like most of those games we're talking about, they cost really little to try it out if they cost anything. So instead of listening to us on a panel, if you want to form a proper opinion on NFT and gaming, you just go try one of those games, whichever it is, and you'll get a sense of what it brings, how it works. Like see by yourself. This is what it's all about.
For me, so I'd say, yeah, I think this is a really good direction that we're moving in. By that, I mean understanding sense of ownership instead of just giving everything to a corporation, because corporates have ownership of when you can even play the game nowadays with DRM, not to mention online assets. So I'm really happy that people are more thinking in this direction of ownership, though I don't know how we could balance the corporate interest in that sense. At the same time, community-based games, NFT, blockchain, it's all about community, and I'm really excited to see what the future can bring with this technology.
Yeah, well, I think the first step was done because everyone is here. So yeah, just be curious, try to understand really what is it about, and not just read what's online. Try it out, like Brice was saying. And there was one last thing, but I forgot. Okay.
Try Dogami.
Try Dogami.
All right, thanks everyone for listening. Please, big round of applause for our speakers.